What's going on, everybody? Welcome to After Prison Show, and in this video we're going to talk about prisoners doing some pretty heroic things. You know, there's this stigma about being locked up, and that is the fact that everybody who's locked up is a bad person. They're horrible, evil people who just deserve to be locked up forever. And the reason I feel this is a stigma is because of the fact that, look, not everybody who's locked up is some horrible piece of shit person. There are good people who do bad things and make dumb decisions, as I have done many times in my life. And there's quite a lot of other people who are locked up pretty much under the same circumstances as well. They've done dumb shit, they're locked up, they're doing their time, and maybe, hopefully, potentially, there's a chance that they will get out, get their shit together, and live a good, positive life. And with all of that being mentioned, in this video I'm going to tell you about some prisoners who have done like some unbelievable heroic deeds while they are locked up. And there are also some really crazy questions that come to mind when thinking about these type of things that I'm about to tell you about. So without further ado, what do you say we just go ahead and dive head first into this video? You know, it's crazy to think, but it actually happens a lot more than you may imagine, where prisoners actually step in to help jail or prison staff in one way or another. And now, though this doesn't happen all of the time, there are certain circumstances where this actually does happen. Whether it's prisoners saving a guard who's in distress, having some sort of medical emergency, whether it's a guard getting beat up by other prisoners, or whether it's just something completely and entirely different, which I'll soon be mentioning as well. Now, it's not in every case where a guard is in distress that prisoners will actually step in to help this individual, and there's a couple of reasons why they may not. One being that they may just not even care. Who cares if that guard's over there getting his ass whooped? Let him get beat up! Or maybe it's because of the fact that they're just scared in general. Whoever's over there beating the shit out of this guard, well, they don't want no parts of that whatsoever. They may be scared of this prisoner, or scared that if they do try to step in to help, that some sort of retaliation will most certainly be coming their way. But again, not in every circumstance is it like this. And in fact, this first story that I want to tell you about is a perfect example of that. This actually happened just last week on Monday in the state of Georgia. And the first crazy thing about this story is the fact that this is the same exact state where the two prisoners escaped from the prison bus, killing the two correctional officers in the process of doing that. And that actually happened on Tuesday of last week. So last Monday, in the same exact state where these two prisoners escaped from this prison bus, there were 6 prisoners part of a jail work detail who were out on the road doing God knows what, whether it was picking up trash, digging out ditches, cutting grass. There's so many different jobs that work details do. But these 6 prisoners were out as a part of this work detail when the officer assigned to watch them collapsed right there in front of them. It was reported that it was over 100 degrees outside, so heat probably played pretty heavily into what happened to this officer. But just imagine, I mean, being locked up, being part of a work detail, here you are out here in the free world, you're outside of the jail, and then all of a sudden an officer collapsed right there in front of you. The guy who was assigned to be watching over you while you're outside of the jail, he just collapsed right there. What would you do if you were a part of that work detail and you saw this happen? Would you step in to try to help this officer, or would you just say, we can run right now? We can legit probably get away. Well, no matter what you think you would have done in that situation, what these 6 prisoners did was most certainly a heroic deed. And what they did was, as soon as this officer collapsed right there in front of them, they jumped into action. One of the prisoners grabbed the cell phone off of the guard, called 911 right there, reported the emergency, while the other prisoners actually worked to take off his bulletproof vest and then perform CPR on this fallen officer, waiting for emergency response to arrive. These prisoners very well likely saved this officer's life. And it's so fucking crazy because of the fact that this happened last Monday, and then on Tuesday, something like polar opposite of prisoners doing heroic things basically happens in the same state. And this story is just swept completely under the rug. Nobody's even really talking about this because all anybody seems to be talking about is how these 2 other prisoners escaped, killed guards in the process, and were on the run. 2 completely different situations involving prisoners, one being absolutely horrific while the other is heroic. These 6 prisoners saved this officer's life, and because of that, the sheriff actually treated them to lunch and desserts at some park that was actually prepared by the family of the officer who they had saved. And what's even more interesting in this story is how the sheriff said that he was going to reduce each of these prisoners' sentences by like a fourth. Now, I'm not sure exactly how much time these guys were serving and for what kind of charges, but to actually be on a work detail, there's a lot of stipulations that go into that. The severity of your charges, how much time you're actually facing. They probably weren't serving all that much time to begin with. Maybe a year, maybe a year and a half at most. Again, there really are some strong stipulations as to what and who was allowed to be on a work detail. But just to think that this sheriff is willing to take away a fourth of each of these individual sentences, I mean, that's a really crazy thing to me, because this is not something that you oftentimes hear about. In fact, I've heard of and know of a lot of situations where prisoners have actually jumped in to help a correctional officer, and I have very rarely ever heard of prisoners getting time cuts because of that. In fact, just last year in July down in Texas, there were 5 prisoners who were being held in a holding cell down in the basement of a jail awaiting court. There was a guard who was positioned on the other side of the door to watch them, and while he was sitting there watching them and talking with the prisoners through the door, this guard he collapsed. These prisoners were locked inside of a holding cell, and there really was nothing that they could do. They couldn't get in contact with anybody. They could be banging on the door forever. There's a good likelihood that nobody would even hear them doing that. So what they decided to do was actually bust out of this holding cell. And to be honest with you, I'm not even really sure how they did that, because these doors are pretty damn strong. I didn't think anyone would just be able to bust through these doors. But these 5 individuals did so. They were probably all working together to break this door open, which they finally succeeded in doing. And when they did, they rushed to the aid of this fallen officer, while others began beating on all sorts of doors, trying to raise any sort of attention that they could, probably waving into the cameras, trying to get the attention of anybody who would be watching those cameras. And it was because of the fact that they broke out of this door and caused so much commotion that emergency response was actually called, and they got down there and saved this officer's life as well. And these prisoners who did this, it was reported that they were facing like assault and drug charges, and yet they weren't offered any sort of time cuts at all. In fact, the only thing that they did get was a thank you. Thank you for saving this guard's life. We're going to need to lock you guys back up in this holding cell because you guys have to go to court. Thank you again. Hope it all works out for you in the courtroom. And you know, with mentioning this story, it just makes me think, and I really want to ask all of you, do you think that when prisoners perform these type of heroic deeds, do you think there should be some sort of incentive in there for them, like a time cut? Because in my own personal opinion, I absolutely think there should be something offered to these guys instead of just a simple thank you. Hey, thanks again. Good luck. I've also heard a lot of stories of prisoners who were out on these work details, again, picking up trash, cutting grass, digging out ditches, whatever it is that they're doing. I've heard a lot of stories of these prisoners who are out here who actually find loaded fucking weapons on the side of the road. And back in 2015, there was a story of 2 prisoners who were part of a work detail. These guys were only serving like 180 days, but their job as a part of this work detail was to literally go down this road picking up trash. And while doing so, they actually found the clip to a 9mm Glock handgun, and then later found the actual handgun. It was reported that the bullets inside of the gun were rusted, so it looked like this gun had been sitting there for a while. Now, when they found this, I'm not exactly sure like how long they waited to actually hand this over to the guard who was watching over them, but they did. That in itself could have had such a negative outcome too. You're out on the side of the road as a prisoner picking up trash, and then all of a sudden you turn around with a freaking gun in your hand. Hey, look what I found! Bang, 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 bang! Yeah, luckily these guys weren't killed for having this weapon and being able to peacefully turn it over to the guard who was watching over them. But in every case that I've ever heard of where a gun is found by a work detail, basically out picking up trash, those guns are stolen and most likely have been used in like the commission of a felony, probably part of a robbery, maybe even a murder. So when they turned this gun in, there really wasn't too much talk about, you know, what this gun was actually used for, because there was an investigation still pending, but there was no mention of these guys getting a time cut for this either. You would think that if you found a weapon that was used in a crime, this gun can actually lead to a case being solved. I'm thinking that a time cut would probably suffice in a case like that. But this story had no mention of that, and I don't know if it's because of the fact that these guys only had 180 days. I don't know if it was because of the fact that nobody was commenting on what this gun was actually used for, but no matter what, I mean, my feeling on this is if you're out on a work detail and you find a weapon on the side of the road, clips, bullet, and the damn gun, and you turn this over peacefully, hey, officer, I just found this Tech 9 on the side of the road. Here you go. You should immediately be released. That's just my own personal opinion about that. And again, I really want to hear what all of you think about this. And I'm reminded of a story that I know of personally. I can't even remember the year that this happened, but it happened locally where there were some guys out on a work detail and they found a gun that was part of a murder investigation. And I'm quite sure that these guys did get some sort of time cut from this deal, if I can remember correctly. I wish I had the information on it. I don't. I'm sorry for that. But I don't understand how certain cases can play out one way and other cases can play out another, where certain prisoners get these time cuts versus other prisoners who do virtually the same thing who don't. Because I think at the end of the day, this really speaks volumes about the type of character displayed by these individuals. If you're willing to step in and save the life of a guard, somebody whose job is to keep you imprisoned, where most individuals would look at these type of people in a negative light, yet here you are stepping in to save this person or to help aid them if, they're having some sort of emergency, getting beat up, whatever the case may be. Or if you're out on a work detail and you find a fucking weapon, drugs, whatever, and you do then decide to turn that over to the guard who's basically got his gun to your back. There really should be some special consideration for each and every one of these individuals, because these really are some special type cases. This is not stuff that happens every single day, and these type of things really should be recognized and rewarded as such. There is one last story that I want to mention in this video that is guaranteed to stir the pot. It's completely off topic, but it's definitely a story that's caught my eye. And this is a police officer involved shooting where the dashboard cam from this case actually was released. And I really do want you guys to check out this video. It's posted on my Instagram. There will be a link down in the comment sections pinned where you guys can go see this video. I posted this a few hours ago. And this is a very crazy situation. We hear so much of these officer involved shootings and whether they're justified, whether they're not justified. And I just really want your opinion as to just what you think of this case in general, because again, on my Instagram is the actual dash cam from this shooting involving a guy who was killed by the name of Philandro Castile. Now, the officer involved in this shooting death was actually charged with manslaughter, and just last Friday he was acquitted of these charges. Now, I'm not going to say whether or not I agree with him being acquitted of these charges, because who the hell knows how this whole situation was spun inside the courtroom. But when you watch this video of this guy who was actually pulled over because of a tail light that was out, and he tells the police that he does have a concealed weapon, and then shit just basically hits the fan and this guy's shot multiple times in this video. This video clearly shows you everything from the time this guy is pulled over, when he tells the officer that he does have this concealed weapon, and then this officer basically just dumps the clip on this guy. There's also a baby who was in the car as well. This man's girlfriend was in the car, and this guy was shot at such close range that I'm surprised the bullets didn't pass through him, through the seats, and actually hit this young girl that was sitting in the back seats. But I do want you guys to check out this video and just let me know what you think of this. Do you feel that this officer should have been acquitted of these charges, or do you feel that this is just murder? I really want to hear what your opinion is of this story. Hey, look, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did so, please leave a like and a comment letting me know exactly what you thought about it. As always, until next time, enjoy life, the free world, never take a moment for granted, and make the most of every day. Peace!